Hello there, and welcome back to The Closet Historian and back to my studio for another project. Now, as I've mentioned in a few places, and you might have noticed from my erratic scheduling, I'm working on quite a few things behind the scenes here to try and get a big mini collection together to show you all in a lookbook soon. And I did want to make some jewelry to pair with those projects, so I decided to turn on the camera and show you how I've been making this style of necklace. This is actually the third of these necklaces that I have made. This one is antique brass with green beads, but I'll be showing you today the antique brass, a version in antique brass with black beads, and then I actually put together a slightly different necklace in gunmetal findings with dark red glass beads, and I'll show you that one today as well. But seeing as this sort of thing does take a little bit of time, let's go ahead and dive on in. Alright, here we are over my little velvet beading mat here on my desk with my keyboard pressed aside. I have some round nose pliers, I have some wire cutters, I also have a crimp tool that I'll be using as needle nose pliers, basically. It doesn't need to be a crimp tool. And then I have these bent nose pliers here that I'll be using as well. Basically the two, like the crimp tool and the plier, I'll be using for opening and closing jump rings. And then the wire cutter and the round nose pliers I'll be using for turning head pins and eye pins, which I do have a bunch of those sitting here. I have eye pins and head pins in antique brass, as that is the color of finish I'll be using for this first necklace. The beads I'll be using today are a set of strands from Bead Landing. These come in 4 different sizes. They're sort of an oval cut crystal bead. They're a glass bead. They're not actually crystal, but they have a crystal cut to them. And this comes in like a 4, 6, 8, and 10 size bead strands, set of strands. But you could also easily use check fire polish in those sizes to make something like this, and I think it would come out very similar. And I'll be linking to these beads and any of the materials I can find online for you below so you can see exactly what I'm using, including linking to these filigree pieces, which are the main kind of component of this necklace. These filigree pieces are actually from Amazon, of all places. I had some that I had purchased on Etsy before, but they also are available on Amazon. I think you get 40 of them for around $6. So again, I will link those below. They do come in antique brass, a silver finish, and then also a bright gold colored finish. I haven't tried the gold yet, but I would like to in the future. I also have these rings you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen. These are 16mm jump rings that I also was able to pick up on Amazon, so I'll link those below. For this project, of course, I have a lot more rings than I ended up using for this, but that's okay. I might do more chainmail inspired stuff in the future. And I will be using some jump rings that came in a set at Michael's, and I will go ahead and link the set of jump rings as well. This is the size 6 jump ring that I'll be using here. And I'm going to open up one of these size 6 rings, slip that over 2 of the size 16 jump rings, and connect those along the sides of each of these filigree pieces. Hopefully you can see what I mean, as this is going to be a lot of me saying the word jump ring over and over again. But just 2 jump rings to attach this on either side of the center of the kind of diamond shape of this filigree piece, and I'm going to repeat this same process to connect 7 of the filigree pieces here for the main body of my necklace. You may need more or less, depending on the size of your neck or how close you want this to fit. This section of the necklace kind of sits up on the neck like a collar, and would be pretty all on its own, honestly, without the dangles and drops I will be adding later. And to finish off this first section of the necklace, I will add 2 smaller filigree pieces, again connecting those with smaller jump rings, the size 6s, and in between the size 16 big jump rings. And the gauge of these size 16s was a little bit thinner than the first necklace I made. You can see actually on the left-hand side here, there is a silver necklace sitting off screen. That's because that's the first one I made. It actually takes a while to kind of discover exactly the pattern that you want to use for something like this. So I just played around with these same sort of pieces to come up with the first necklace, and now I am repeating everything in the antique brass color that I had decided on when I made the silver version earlier. Here's my set of jump rings. You can see how many sizes this comes with, and I will be using a couple different sizes in the end for this project. For the main body of this, though, we are good to go with the size 6s, size 16s, but now I'm going to go ahead and use my eye pins and some size 6 crystal beads here. I'm going to go ahead and put 4 of those on each eye pin, trim off and turn the other end of that to create a little connector here in, of course, the black jet color bead. I'll just use the round nose pliers to make an eye on the other side of the eye pin after I've cut it down. I'm going to create a bunch of those to fill in all the spaces between the points of the diamonds of the filigree here. And I will connect that on either side. There's kind of 3 holes at the top of each diamond of filigree here. And I'm going to connect this on either side of the very top point. Hopefully, again, you can see what I mean. It almost seems silly to try and narrate this, because really, either you can tell what I'm doing on the camera or you cannot. Let's face it. I can't decide if it's easier to narrate this or when I was trying to do the bead weaving, which you can check out a necklace that I made with more traditional techniques over here perhaps. But this is just a lot of opening and closing jump rings, like I said. And I am still using the size 6 jump ring here to attach these new turned pieces to the points of my filigree, filling in these spaces, giving this a little bit more structure so it can be worn like a collar up on my neck. I will use one additional jump ring to kind of extend the height of these last few small filigree pieces on either side. So just an additional size 6 jump ring in here, just to get that a little bit taller so it meets up with the rest of the necklace well. Same on this other side. Alright, so I have the main sort of collar portion constructed now, and I can decide exactly what sort of dangly nonsense I want to do. And I will begin that by connecting 5 filigree pieces with, again, size 6 jump rings to the ends of the 5 centermost filigree pieces on the collar, like so, just connecting those on. There we go. And then I'm going to actually hang, again, 2 of the size 16 rings from each of those. And to do that, I'm actually going to use size 8 jump rings, jumping up a size here. And again, I'm going to connect these to either side of the very tippy point of these, just for some consistency. Hopefully you see what I mean. There's not like, you know, there's no like battleship, like 4E, 3, you know, there's no like way to tell you where on the filigree I'm putting these things. So again, hopefully you can just see what I'm doing, you know? Then I'm going to want a little dangly glass bead charm for the center pendant of this. So I'm just grabbing a head pin and grabbing some different glass beads. I actually had some really like cheap, sad bead caps in here that I used for this as well. So I grabbed some antique brass bead caps and actually threaded on a couple of jump rings when I was making these. So I actually used jump rings as beads to help this kind of match in with the rest of the necklace. But I'm going to turn this little pendant. The main bead here is a size 10, the largest size of the beads. And I will go ahead and hang that off this center pendant, I guess. Center size 16s. Close that on there, like so. And I'm actually going to use 2 jump rings, just again for that sort of layered chainmail style effect. And I'll go ahead and repeat that same dangly doodad, make 6 more of those, using my head pins, bead caps, and glass beads here, so that I have 6 of those same dangles ready for another part of the necklace. Then I'll take some eye pins again and actually thread on a size 4, the smallest size, then a bead cap, size 8, bead cap, size 4, like so, to create a smaller little buddy, and I will turn a hoop on the other side of that as well, creating a connector, as it were, as opposed to a dangle. Like so, turn the top of that, trim off my extra wire. You can either trim it first and then turn it, or turn it and then trim it. Depends on how sharp your wire cutter is, which way is easier, honestly. And all my wire cutters after the chainmail inspired stuff I've been doing recently are all super dull, so that's a shame. But I'm going to make a bunch more of those because I'm going to need 2 per gap up here in the necklace. So in between the dangling filigree pieces, there will be 2 of these dangles in each of those. And I'll grab a size 10 jump ring and connect each of these sets of 2 here for the blank spots. And I'll use some size 6 jump rings again to connect these up into the same part of the filigree where the last connector was along the bottom of the collar as well. And then from that size 10 that connects these 2 charms, I will go ahead and hang some more of the largest size 16 rings, and I'm actually going to use 3 size 8 jump rings to do that. So again, it has a little bit of a thicker appearance, a little bit more chainmail looking. And then finally from that size 16, I will again use another size 6 jump ring, oh god, to go ahead and hang the dangly charms from earlier from those. Whew. I told you it was going to be a lot of me saying the word jump ring. It might honestly be nicer to have this video on mute than have me try and explain things. I'm going to connect two about 4-inch long pieces of chain to this left side of the necklace here. And I did create two, using head pins, I created two little smaller danglies to hang from the very ends of this, just to give it a more finished appearance, like so. It's nice to have a little bit of extra chain on this for adjustability. Also, it just makes it easier to put this on when you have a bit more to hang on to, I guess. And then on the other side, I will use a couple of jump rings to connect some lobster claw clasps here in that same antique brass. And then with that, this first necklace will be done. This did actually take me around, probably an hour, if not a little over that, hour and a half, I think, total. This footage for this video was about 2.5 hours before I sped everything up and cut out all the extra nonsense for both this necklace and the next one I will show you. This does actually go together quite easily. It's very fun and simple projects to put together, which is why I ended up making a third one of these with the green beads instead of the black that you saw me wearing in the intro of this video. But using those same sort of techniques, I'm actually going to put together another necklace here, because I am making an ensemble out of a very fun gunmetal and red jacquard brocade here in the studio, and I think the open neckline will need a necklace, so I decided to try and throw something together using some gunmetal charms I had laying around here in the studio. And here I'm still figuring out exactly what I want to do. I'm turning some red glass beads and gunmetal colored glass beads onto some eye pins, as you can see, and I'm trying to connect these quatrefoil looking connectors, but that first kind of arrangement I tried didn't work because they didn't hold their shape enough up along my neck to kind of provide that same sort of collar that that first necklace has from the first sort of strand of filigree. So I needed to find something that had a little bit more structure, and so I ended up taking eye pins, threading on a red glass bead, a small size 4 check glass bead, and then threading on a jump ring that was connected to the connector. Like I said, trying to explain this is a nightmare. Hopefully, again, you can see what I mean. I have this eye pin, I have 2 beads, thread this through the connector, like so, and then thread on more beads that kind of holds that into place and gives the top collar portion of this a little bit more structure. And then I will connect each of these ends of these eye pins with those little connectors I made for the first round of trying to put this buddy together. It's all really about playing with materials. Give yourself permission to play around with things, and then you'll find new ways of putting things together. This, I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm really happy with what I came up with in the end. I did kind of put half a necklace together, figure out, like hold it up to my neck, figure out it wasn't going to work, and then try it again. And this second time was the charm for this particular project. So yes, now that I have these funny structured eye pins in place on either side of the connector, I will go ahead and connect those. And I am, again, using size 6 jump rings. I find them very versatile and useful to have. This time, of course, in the gunmetal finish. There are a lot of fun beads and findings and things like that at craft stores, at least here in the United States. At Michael's and Joann's, they usually do have some very fun stuff, especially over the years. I've come across some really cool stuff at different times. I've been beading a long time, since I was a child. It was probably one of my first hobbies, actually, was making jewelry when I was little. They used to have bead kits at Costco, like at Christmas time, and I used to like get those for Christmas. Unsurprisingly, I loved a craft kit when I was a kid. So I've been beading for ages, and I actually worked at bead shops during high school, so I've been doing this sort of stuff a very long time, but it is also very easy. Once you learn to turn a head pin like this, there's all kinds of stuff you can create. So I'm going to create these little squares, and then I will connect the squares together to give this collar portion of this necklace structure. And I am using some hematite beads for this as well, which adds a bit of weight and makes this very, very cold up against my neck later. And if you're looking very closely, you can see I'm actually using large oval-shaped jump rings to attach these two finished assembled squares together here, just because those were the largest gunmetal jump rings I had hanging around the studio. I do have like kind of a junk drawer here in my studio that has all of the beads and little bits that have been hanging on throughout the ages, and so sometimes when I need, like, what's the largest jump ring I have, I will go through there and see if I can't find like 12 of them, a little small handful, a little grouping, enough to finish off a necklace, which luckily in this case I did. But I'll just make a bunch of these squares and connect them for the length around my neck for the collar portion of this, and then I will get to the danglies. I wish I could find more of these quatrefoil designs. I think these were a Joann's purchase, but again, I had them kicking around the studio, have had them for years, so I'm not exactly sure where these little Gothic quatrefoils were from. It's either Joann's or Michael's, because it was on one of their little strands that they have in those bead aisles there, so I'm not exactly sure where I got those buddies. I'm going to be linking you to a couple of supply shops below, my favorite beads and finding shops over on Etsy. I do get most of my supplies on Etsy, especially with beads. Sometimes I find findings in person, but there's two really nice finding shops that I really like browsing on Etsy, so I'll link both of those below. And I did find these very cool sort of teardrop shaped findings, filigree-ish, Gothic-looking findings at one of those shops, and so I will link these below for you. I can't link the first ones, the top quatrefoils, but I can link these at least. And I will attach some of those on here just to the large jump rings that make up the main collar portion. And then similar to the first style of necklace, I will use 2 connectors to create little triangle drops from the collar itself, and then hang another of the teardrop finding from those. In the end, this necklace really satisfies my sort of like vampire Gothic leanings. It's the kind of goth necklace that I would have loved to have when I was a child and I was not allowed to be goth, you know? But now that I'm an adult, as we know, I mostly wear black, and I really give in to my more Gothic tendencies, as I say, these days. Again, I'm using size 6 jump rings, and then those larger oval jump rings for all of this, just because that's what I had in stock. And I'll connect everything together. And then again, I will finish this one with chains on one side, and then lobster claw clasps on the other, just as I finished the first necklace. In my mind, this sort of thing is a very simple project, but then again, if you perhaps are very new to jewelry making or have never done any jewelry making before, it is less so. I would say just pause the video and study the pattern, because it's, like, again, impossible to describe, I suppose. I don't know how bead magazines and such do it. We all know I'm not necessarily the best at tutorials, honestly, which is silly because that's what I do for a living. So, you know, it's just a constant desire to get better, and hopefully one day I'll get to a place where even I feel like what the heck I'm saying is understandable. But I'm certainly not there yet, so I'm always hoping to grow and improve in this area. And here's what this necklace looks like all finished up. Again, I will just put my chains on this left side and add some lobster claws on the right, so that I can try this on for you and show you what it looks like. And here is the finished gunmetal and red necklace I put together as well. Again, some of these findings were from like Michael's or Joann's ages ago. Some of these beads have been kicking around my studio for a while, but these drop findings here, these little spikes, which are super fun, are from my shop on Etsy, and I will have that link for you below. Although do be careful, because the findings themselves aren't very expensive, but then by the time you add all the things that you like to your cart, you'd be surprised how the total just really racks up quickly, so do be careful. And here is the finished brass and black version. Please, let's all avoid the fact that I still need that haircut. We'll get to it. July is the month when I'm going to catch up on everything. I hope you enjoyed seeing these projects come together today, and thank you as always for watching. I'll be back with more sewing, vintage fashion, costuming, and crafting real soon, so I'll see you then. Bye.